All right. Well, welcome to the Pro Church Marketing Podcast. I'm Jono with FaithWorks Marketing and excited to have Mr. Dustin Stout with us today from Magai, a really amazing platform that I am using every single day. So, dude, thanks for hanging out, man. Appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for inviting me
And
here.
so introduce yourself. Tell us about you and Magai.
So I'm Dustin. I enjoy long walks on the beach. And
No
I'm the
company
founder of
fast food.
Magi. For the last 15 years, I owned and operated a marketing agency. We did everything from website design to SEO, social media marketing, and management. Basically, we built your website and drove traffic to it by any organic means necessary. After a while of doing that, I realized that my real gift is perfectionism. It's a gift and a curse. I would spend way too much time trying to figure out what color and shape the buttons should be, and that kind of a mentality doesn't scale very well. It's hard to delegate. It's hard to
Yeah.
hire people who are as good as you, and hard to let go of projects because you care so much about the details. So I found that God gifted me with this perfectionism to channel it into building products for people. Focus all that perfectionism into one product and help thousands of people rather than try to help one person at a time or one business at a time. And so I started developing digital products in 2014. The first big product was a WordPress plugin that I built with the help of two partners. That company became fairly successful. I exited that company in 2020 to start my next two software projects, which absolutely failed miserably. It can't be overstated how bad they failed. I found myself in a place where it was the darkest season of my life and thought I had nothing left to give to the world, and everything I was doing was turning to ash. And out of nowhere came this thing called ChatGPT. And having been in marketing, we've been working with AI tools for years before ChatGPT. When this thing came out, I knew something was different. And I knew that it was going to completely change the entire world and how we think about work and ministry even. And so I immediately started using it. And as an entrepreneur and as a perfectionist, I started going, well, why doesn't it do this? And that kind of sucks. And why can't I do this? And I wish it did that. And so long story short, I decided to build a better version of ChatGPT. And that was really the genesis of the idea of Magi. Can I make ChatGPT more functional and easier to work with on our daily workflows? And from there, the ideas just kept flowing. It was like God opened up a new door that I never knew was there and started me on this journey.
Awesome. That very cool. Very cool. And so we were talking earlier, you had some youth ministry experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I spent about 4
You-
years as a youth director for a satellite campus at a very large church. The main church campus was in Porter Ranch, California, San Fernando Valley, about 15,000 members. And they had at the time, I think, 7 different satellite churches. And I was down at one of them in Woodland Hills doing both the middle school and the high school ministry. I was paid part-time, but we know that youth ministry is
No
not a
such thing.
part-time job,
Yeah.
especially when you're
Right.
doing it all by yourself. And it just so happened that I knew graphic design and was figuring out web design. And so that meant I got handed all the graphic design tasks for the church, and I had to do all the website stuff for the church. And so it was a lot of work. And unfortunately, the season of life that I was in, I was just about to be a brand new dad. First time dad. We were newly married, about to have our first child, and I was told that I no longer had the budget for my salary was no longer existent, and that it was going to stop as of January 1st. They would have loved me to stay and keep teaching and keep doing all the things I was doing for peanuts,
Right.
but now for no peanuts. And unfortunately, I had to go get a real job.
You get a real job.
And had to leave that position.
Gotcha. So you get church staff life, which so in relation to Magi and AI, and by the way, I'm a daily user of Magi, and man, just love it. It's so much more intuitive and just having things there. And I'll let you talk to like some of the specifics about like what were the things you fixed? What were the problems that you saw and you wanted to make better? But then, in relation to, in relation to how some of those things could fit into ministry beyond, I am such a novice when it comes to really making use of AI. I'm probably like everybody else who just, I write some captions for social media content, get some inspiration for some articles or whatever for our website, but I know that I'm not using it to what it's fully capable of. So anyway, tell me about what different things Magi fixes, what problems you solve there, and how that translates to church world.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I wanted to maintain with Magi is that I didn't want to handicap the AI. The real breakthrough of conversational AI, I mean, there are different types of AI out there, specifically focusing on conversational, the chat. The magic of it is that you can literally tell it anything. And if it can do what you tell it to do in the form of text output, it can do it. I mean, before ChatGPT, working with these AI tools was so clunky and it was so bad what it came up with. Everything was predicated on fill out this form and use
Yeah.
this template and find the template within a million other templates that may or may not be what you're looking for. You know, it was almost like this Netflix effect. You go in, you have to scroll through 1,000 templates and hopefully find the one you're looking for. And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But essentially, you're putting your ideas into somebody else's box and you have to fit it in there somehow. It just wasn't a good user experience. But when you can just tell the AI, hey, I need to get this done, help me do it, it unlocks so many potential opportunities. And so when I built Magi, I wanted to keep that magic. A lot of tools out there, you know, the old way of building a software product was niche down as much as possible and build it so custom that it answers the exact need that is needed, right? You know,
Yeah.
build the exact feature that people want that does the one thing really well. But with AI, the possibilities are limitless. And so anytime you build an app that is like, we do this one thing with AI, you're handicapping the AI. It's like you're chaining it to a wall and forcing users to be limited in what they can do. So the very first thing that I started Magi with was I wanted everyone, whether you're a church, you're a pastor, an administrator, you're an elder, you're a volunteer, I wanted it to have that same limitless capability that comes with conversational AI. So there's no nicheness to it. But if you understand how powerful these AI models are, I mean, you can do all sorts of things. Now, one of the things I did build into Magi from the start was the ability to read a web page. So in the beginning, you couldn't like give ChatGPT a link to your church website and have it know what's on that website,
Yeah.
right? It would just wildly guess. Maybe if it was part of its training data, it might get some things right, but you can't just say, go to this web page, read it, and then understand what's on that page. That wasn't a thing. I built that right into Magi. So when you paste a link to any web page, your church web page or any other public facing web page on the internet, Magi goes, oh, this is a link to a page. Let's go to that page, scrape all that text from that page, add it to the user's prompt like it's an attachment to an email, and then send it off to the AI. So now the AI can read exactly what's on that page. And
Hmm.
so this is a great way for a church administrator or somebody in the, you know, the admin team at the church who's in charge of the website to say, hey, here's our church homepage. What's missing? And have the AI comment on what's missing from that page. Or say, how can we improve the copy? Have the AI improve the copy. Another great example is YouTube videos. So in that same idea of like, I wish I can give it this YouTube video and have it know what's in the video. Magi, if you paste a YouTube video link, Magi goes, YouTube, I'm going to go to that YouTube video and I'm going to find that transcript, that audio transcript. I'm going to pull it into this conversation and attach it just like a web page. And now the AI can see the full transcript of that video. It knows what's in that video. And the possibilities there are, let's turn this YouTube video into a blog post. Let's chop this YouTube video, pull out some highlights and turn it into social media content. You know, anything that the AI is capable of doing with text input and text output, you can immediately start doing and repurpose that content. I know a lot of churches who live stream their services on Sundays. Our church does that here in beautiful Bakersfield, California. So they can essentially, even if the pastor is not a notes kind of pastor, they can, after that live stream is recorded, they can give that link to the AI model inside of Magi, say, hey, grab the transcript and make some notes and turn it into a study guide for small group questions. Really just
Wow.
some really cool stuff you can do when you don't limit the AI.
Now that makes sense because yeah, I mean I'm hit with ads all the time about different, you know, this AI product, this AI product, but really all they are different. They took AI, ChatGPT, whatever, and limited it to a
Mm-hmm.
certain niche and they're selling that. Yeah, that makes that I have
Yeah.
that's
And
kind of a
I wouldn't say
reversal of
there's
how
a
we're
ton
thinking
wrong
of
with
it.
that. Like I've seen a lot of these companies out there building church specific tools and church specific AI utilities. And there are plenty of reasons for that. You know, there are some things that you yourself can't engineer just with a single prompt alone. And I get that. But, you know, to have an AI model that has that, you know, unlimited potential where you can just work it to however you need to work it in your any given scenario is a really powerful thing.
So back to the YouTube sermon video. And
Mhm.
so let's say we want to, because this is something we're doing for churches and we're trying to figure out the best way to do it. Churches, we do, you know, we're running Google ads for churches' websites. And for those to perform well, you've got to have some content on your website. And churches' websites are notoriously thin. There's very few words on there and they're
Mhm.
clean and pretty, but there's just not a
Big
whole lot to
problem for
work with.
SEO.
So one of the things, yeah, horrible for SEO. And the Google grant really functions more like SEO than it does like pay-per-click ads.
Yeah.
And so we've got to have good content on there. So one of the things that we're really trying to do more of is get sermon videos and then
Mhm.
transcribe them and then get a summary. And so one thing that in our discussion that we're trying to figure out, and this is, I'm just, can you give us some advice here? And anybody who's listening may be in the same boat. I don't know, but we want a summary of it, but we want to stay as true to the way that the pastor talks as possible without, you know, we don't want you to add in a lot of different vocabulary. We want to use his
Yeah.
vocabulary and it still sound like him. Because the other thing that churches, I know in our case, pastors are funny about the content. That's why there's not a lot of content, is because they're kind of perfectionist about it. And so
Hmm.
if we come to them with just some general, like just feed in the transcript and all right, give us a summary, they're going to turn it down. So we need it like, this is pre-approved because it's just everything you already said.
Right. Yeah. And so that's one of the first things that people often realize when they work with conversational AI like ChatGPT or Claude. They might ask it to write something for them, but the thing that it writes sounds nothing like what they would have written, right? It doesn't sound
Right.
like their voice at all. It sounds like a generic AI voice. And that's the biggest problem that people have to overcome when they're having AI write for them. Now, I thought about that from day one with Magi, and that's why we have a feature called personas. Now, at a high level, a persona is simply just giving the AI a role to play. You're
Mhm.
telling it how to behave and how to serve you best, essentially. Now,
Mhm.
the way that this works is it's really at a hidden level. So when you go into ChatGPT and you start a chat, the AI has a set of hidden instructions. It's called the system prompt or the system message that's essentially informs it how to interact with you, how to speak to you, how to handle your questions and queries and prompts. And that informs its behavior. It dictates its voice. Now, the system prompt that is there by default is as generic as possible because it has to
Mhm.
be able to handle all sorts of different types of requests. But when you implement your own system prompt, when you can tell the AI, hey, instead of this generic assistant, you are an expert copywriter and you write in the style of insert your pastor's name here. You use language that is consistent with the language that is given to you. You know, you can basically orchestrate and detail out exactly how you want that AI to respond. And when you add that, or when you do that, when you implement a system prompt like that, the results that you get from the AI are far better. They're more focused. They have a more consistent styling, and it's less generic. So we from day one had this idea of personas where you can create your own persona. You can
Mhm.
tell it about your voice, your writing style. You can feed it examples. And I have a whole blog post that's written on exactly how to build a brand voice for your AI model and then how to implement that brand voice into the model so that when it does produce something for you, when you give it a transcript and you tell it summarize this, you activate that persona, and what it outputs is exactly the brand voice that you told it. So we've got our company brand voice personas so good, into the point where I can put something in, I can put a minimal prompt in there and just say, hey, write us a tutorial on generative AI stuff. I don't know. Insert topic here. And the stuff that it comes out with sounds exactly like me. I might change a word here or there, but
Right.
it's near perfect output every time because we took the time to craft that persona. and tell it what our brand voice is, because otherwise, how would it know?
Wow. Okay. Okay. Very cool. Well, that answers my question. So I need to get on. Well, I need to go read that blog post and
Yeah, it's a
create
step-by-step tutorial. We have a brand voice generator persona that
Mhm.
if you don't have a brand voice, you don't know how to create a brand voice, you can go start a chat in Magai, pick the brand voice generator persona, and that persona will walk you through how to craft that brand voice. And then you can feed it articles, you can feed it sermon notes, you can feed it transcripts and say, analyze this writing style, analyze this blog post, and formulate what the writer's style is, what their voice sounds like. And then once it does that, you say, turn this into an instruction for an AI model system prompt. And it does it.
Huh.
Really
Okay.
brilliant. And that blog
Very,
post, you'll find it easily. It's there. It'll walk you
very
right through that process.
so. Kind of an aside question. How does somebody decide? Because in Magi, you've got access to all of the models of AI, right? I mean, like you've got.
Well, not all of them. So part of my job, I feel like, is a curator. I
Mhm.
think of myself as a museum curator because right now, if you go out in the world and search, there are hundreds of conversational AI models, not to mention all the image models and all the video models and all the X, Y, and Z models. But I find I feel that my job is not to just give my users access to all of them, because again, going back to the whole template thing when it comes to old AI and the Netflix effect, there's so much stuff in there that you don't know what to choose. I feel like my job is to give users enough variety that they have all the capabilities covered and all the sort of range of current AI technology covered, but not too much so that it's redundant. I don't want redundancy in there. So what we have a mixture of models that have a range of capabilities, some of the most advanced models, but some of the less advanced models that maybe cost less and thereby allow you to stretch out your monthly usage quota further and further. And we have other models. Some models are moderated, which means if you give it certain subject matter and that violates its policies, then it
Mhm.
won't interact with that. A lot of faith-based organizations can sometimes have trouble with ChatGPT because it might feel uncomfortable answering questions that its more liberal training may be opposed to, right? So we
Gotcha.
have both moderated models and unmoderated models. We have models that have the ability to only see text, and then we have models that have the ability to see text and or images if you put them in there. And soon some that will be able to see videos as well. So I try to build in enough variety so that users can go, okay, this one seems to work well for this task, and maybe this one works better for this task.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, and that's just something I was unsure of. Just seeing all the models. Not only in Magi, just I mean everywhere. Like, all right, do I
Yeah.
just pick one that I like?
Yeah.
And
Well, it's
what's
really important to explore. And this is what I encourage a lot of users to do is try one of the models that you think might work and then try a different one that you haven't tried yet. Because what you'll find is these different models have different capabilities, but they also have different personalities. By default, ChatGPT is a little bit more creative. It tends to be a little more fluffy in its language, whereas Claude from a company called Anthropic tends to be a little more human-like. It tends to be a little less fluffy, but also a little more empathetic.
yeah,
So you find that. And then you switch over to Grok from XAI, and you find it's a little bit snarky and it's got a little bit more of an edgy personality. Again, depending on what your use case is and what style works best for your business or brand or organization, you might find one works better than the other. Now, the other benefit here also, and we saw this happen just last week when OpenAI released some new stuff, and then almost immediately all their servers crashed. And then all the GPT models were unavailable. Nobody could use ChatGPT. But if you're a Magi user, all you have to do is switch to a different model and you can keep working. So another benefit of having multiple different providers in there.
and so if I build this persona, can I have that persona, but then switch through the different models?
Yeah.
Will that feed that model if I'm using
Yeah,
the right
absolutely.
terminology?
So a persona is essentially just it's a role you're giving to the model. So
Okay.
it's both at the same time. So you pick a model and then you give it a persona, and you can change the model at any time and keep the persona that's the same, or you can or you can keep the model the same and change the persona as many times as you need to, as many times as the conversation changes. So you
Gotcha.
might start with the conversation with, this is usually my workflow because I've found ChatGPT does tend to be more creative. So it's better at coming up with ideas. So I'll start with GPT 4.0 and I'll start with my educational content creator persona. So it knows we're creating educational content. It's trained on that. And we'll come out with an outline for this content. And once that outline's done and I want to do the actual writing, I'll switch over to Claude because more human empathetic language. And then I'll switch to our brand voice persona so that it outputs stuff in our voice already ready to be published.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. What's something that, have you seen any churches doing anything like that you've been like, oh, that's cool. That's a good way to use this. That's different.
One cool idea that I hadn't thought of, because I've been out of the church world for 15 years now. One user, so we have one of our features is the ability to have workspaces. And a workspace is essentially a way to silo off your different projects. So just recently, OpenAI introduced what they call projects. And several months ago, Claude introduced this idea of projects. And essentially, it's like a file cabinet where you keep all the conversations that relate to one project in one thing. We just called them workspaces, and we've had them since day one. So you can, in a workspace, you can give it custom context. So you can say, for this workspace, every time I start a conversation, I want the AI to know these things. I don't want to have to feed it these things every single time. I want it to know this on every single conversation. And one of those things that I've heard a church doing was putting their volunteer list in that custom context so that the AI knows who all their available volunteers are. And then anytime somebody leaves or goes away, they update that list. And they also put their service times and any special events in there. So they kind of keep a custom context of their resources and their calendar events so that when they open up a conversation, they can say to the AI, hey, based on our current schedule of events, create a table of all the events we have coming up in the next month and schedule all our volunteers accordingly in a way that spreads them out evenly. And in seconds, they have a full spreadsheet style table of service dates, times, and the volunteers who are scheduled for those times. So creating an entire volunteer calendar in a matter of seconds just because the AI already had access to the information.
No, okay. Very cool. Very cool. Is there something that, church or not, is there something that you wish like everybody knew about AI, or wish they would do? Like, this would be so cool if you would just start doing this.
Well, as a former SEO agency owner, marketing agency owner, I mean, I wish every church would do the same exact process every time. So as soon as the sermon is published on YouTube, if I were running that content team, I would be taking the YouTube link into Magai, posting it in there, obviously have a brand voice already created, and say, turn this sermon transcript into a blog post outline, and then let's write that blog post section by section, because you never want to have it write an entire blog post at once. I have another whole article on this concept alone, but have it write the article section by section, make sure it's good, publish the article. Once the article's done, now let's turn this transcript into a worksheet guide for study groups, for study group questions or discussion questions, something like that. And then now let's turn all of this into a week or 2 weeks worth of social media posts. I mean, you can literally go through the same thread, and I would have just a standard operating procedure. And within Magai, you can actually save prompts. So you can have like a prompt folder of, sermon SOP, post sermon SOP. So create the blog post, outline, next section. And then, create that whole standard operating procedure through prompts in a single chat. And I would have one person just go through that every week. Sermon's done. It's on YouTube. Here's the SOP. Execute it. And that way you have website content. You have fresh website content every single week. You have social content every week. You got your workbook or your study guide questions ready, all with there. And I would say this is probably possible to do within 30 minutes. Otherwise, would have probably taken a human person by themselves several hours.
A full work day for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm a content guy. So like the first thing I think of is like, okay, how do we take this content and repurpose it and turn it into more content to feed our flock and to bring more people into, our world.
Yeah, and so many pastors, I mean, assuming that they're putting the time in, which most of the pastors I know are spending a lot of time every week on their sermon, man, why not use that for
Yeah.
get more visibility on it? Because
Mm-hmm.
instead of just, preaching at one time for 30 minutes, I mean, it can go a lot of places.
Yeah, I mean, there's not every church member goes to your sermon that day, right? A lot of people have to miss. Some people weren't there. They had X, Y, and Z commitments, or they were sick, or it was too rainy or too cold, or the Cowboys were playing. That's a terrible example. But, people miss the sermon. And so you still want to feed your sheep if they had to miss that Sunday sermon. So feed them with a blog post, feed them with the social content, make sure that their study group is getting the best possible questions. So repurpose that
And
content.
if you're a pastor because I talk to pastors every week who are like, yeah, we need to show up on Google better. We need to show up on Google.
Yeah.
And then I go look at the website and there's hardly anything on it. And so if you want to show up on Google, you've got to make Google happy. And the thing that makes Google happy is content on your website. Google, as smart as Google is still a dumb robot and still needs words to be fed to it.
Yeah,
and
it needs to consume words to know why it would send people to you.
Exactly. And so, over time, if you get that workflow in place, then Google's going to reward you for that. And you can stop being frustrated that you're the 17th, you're number 17 on Google Maps. And then,
right.
Yeah. So that's one way to do it. So what about a couple more questions? Just anything that you think like churches should be careful of with AI, whether it be ethical or just be careful kind of stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the first inkling and a lot of hesitation that a lot of pastors instinctually have is like, they don't want AI writing their entire sermon for them. Right. And they shouldn't, they absolutely should not. You've been given this calling as a teacher and as a shepherd. And so it's up to you to be guided by the Holy Spirit on what it is you should be teaching and how you should be teaching it. I think AI is a great writing aid when you're stuck on coming up with an example or an analogy. AI is really good at helping you come up with analogies. I historically not great at analogies, but now with AI, I've been able to, come up with some much better analogies. And so I think it's more a writing aid and a writing assistant, and should not be replacing our Holy Spirit guided, path that God wants us to take for our flock. But again, that being said, AI should absolutely help you write sermons faster, easier, more effectively. It should be another voice that you can sort of get ideas from, but should not replace your shepherding, your experience. I think that's the biggest thing for me when it comes to using it in church. Other than that, it's just a matter of making sure that the human element is there. I've said this before, AI is a crutch for the lazy and it's rocket fuel for the ambitious. If you are lazy and just trying to shortcut your work instead of trying to enhance your work, you're not going to get the best results with using AI. It's going to be dull. It's going to be unimpressive. But if you're using it to augment your skills and abilities, you're going to get so much further. It's not about just getting stuff done faster. It's about getting stuff done faster and better. So you still have to exert some effort and take the time to make sure that whatever you're using that the AI has done for you, you're putting your seal of approval on it and knowing that your reputation is on the line. The analogy I use and had AI help me with was when I was an agency owner, people would hire us as copywriters, as ghostwriters. So we would write articles for our clients that ranked for SEO, and we would write these long articles, but part of our job was to write it in their name, which means we had to learn their voice, we had to learn their writing style, their values, and then we had to write it. But even though we wrote it for them and their name was going on it, they knew that they have to proofread it and make sure that anything going out in their name is signed off by them. And in my opinion, that is the same thing of having written it yourself. It's just like delegating any task to a staff member. You yourself could do it, but you're putting them in charge of doing it. It's a representation of you. They are your ambassador, so to speak, just like we are the ambassadors for Christ. And so you must make sure that it is a reputation, that your reputation is not going to be tainted because you didn't take the time to proofread.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. It's still needs some babysitting. And
Mm-hmm.
I think I read a post you had written, it may have been today that you wrote it, but you made the point of you really got to treat it like an employee too, that you're a new
Mm-hmm.
employee that you're onboarding, and you've got to take them through some of the processes of learning, what your church is about, or if you're a business, what your business is like, just like you would onboard a brand new employee. You can't just say, all right, good luck,
Yeah.
go do your work.
Yeah.
And I
And I've
thought
done this at my conference talks too. I've brought people up on stage and have said, okay, give me a blog post idea and write me an outline, giving them no other words, nothing else. But this, and the obvious, next question is, well, about what? And how should I be writing this? And who should I be writing it for? And so you
yeah,
really do have to think of AI instead of just thinking it as like I want to press a button and have it do a thing. You really
yeah,
have to think of it like an employee, in that an employee needs all your company values or organization values. It needs the context of what your organization does and who it serves and what your style is, what your mission statement is, what your vision statement is. You have to take the
yeah.
time to feed it the context it needs to give you the output that you want. Otherwise, you're going to spend a whole lot of time editing and auditing what the AI comes up with. But if you spend that time, feed it the context it needs, you're going to streamline your process. You're going to save yourself from having to do all that editing work, and you're going to get much better output.
Yeah. So not being lazy up front, but investing some time up front is then going to get you to that place where now, you can just go in and say,
Yeah. And that's why we have, one of the new industries that I'm seeing pop up with this onset of AI and how every organization is trying to figure out how to implement it into their businesses. AI implementers. There are people who are, one of my friends, Julia McCoy, she's starting a business, and their whole goal is to help businesses and organizations implement AI in the most efficient way possible. Basically, I think of it like they are the HR of AI. They are hiring your AI staff for you and employing it in your business, installing it in the organization in a way that they can get off, hit the ground running right away.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So my last question was going to be like, what do you think is next? What do you think is next with AI? What big is coming? If you had to make a prediction, or maybe you already know, but that sounds like that's probably one of them. Is that people are going to start making their living implementing AI?
Yeah, people are doing that right now. I've seen a lot of AI implementer consultants, whether an individual AI implementer consultant or entire companies where that's what they do. They come install these AI systems. But what I see as the real big next unlock for AI is something that we've got all of our resources pouring into, is this idea of agents. So a lot of people have heard this word AI agent tossed around for the last 2 years. Ever since ChatGPT came out, people were already saying like, okay, how do we create agents? And this idea of agents is, how do we create an AI that does things more than just outputting text or images? How does it get it to take actions, like go send an email and actually publish a blog post for us? How do we get it to put stuff on the website or deliver stuff to our Slack? Actually taking actions outside of the app that it's in. But the truth is, AI hasn't been really good at it. So it took a while for us to even be able to give actions to AIs. And then it took over the last, I think, year and a half of the technology actually catching up to where the AI can be reliable in doing those actions. A lot of it up till now has just been really bad results, not anywhere close to something that you could trust to run by itself. Still needed a lot of human supervision. But I think where the technology is at now, it's right on the cusp of being able to implement actions, execute actions, and then create multi-step workflows. So where you could say, have agent number 1 do X, Y, and Z prompts, then hand it off to AI agent number 2, execute X, Y, and Z prompts, and then take this action, and then hand it off to another one. So what we're building right now into Magai is up-leveling our personas into agents. I don't believe something is an agent until it can take an action and have some agency to perform tasks. So we're up-leveling them to agent status. And once we do that, you'll be able to connect your email account, your Zapier account, your other web apps, virtually anything you'd be able to connect these AI to so they can take actions outside the app. But then the next phase of that, which is super exciting, is then tying different personas and different actions and different prompts together in a series of steps, almost like a workflow or a standard operating procedure, and then have it run either with a human in the loop, where a human has to approve every step, and then it would just go and continue to execute the plan, or have it fully autonomously on its own execute an entire series of steps and processes. And I think that's the next big thing. Whether or not AI is ready for the multi-step process, I'm not sure. We do know that it is now executing actions in a reliable way. So the next step is just really to test and see how many actions in sequence can we trust it with before it goes off the rails.
Wow. Okay. But that sounds incredible. And I'm sure you'll get it there. Yeah. I mean, wow. And if you could make it do my taxes, that would be incredible.
Well, we'll see about that.
Yeah. So anyway, cool, man. Well, look, man, this has been great. Thank you so much. If somebody wants to go start using Magai, what do they need to do?
Just head straight to magai.co. That's magai.co.
Sweet. Go do that. All right. Thanks, Dustin. Thanks, everybody, for watching, listening, whatever you're doing. Appreciate you.